I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there. For more than 3 decades, a single question has cast an uneasy pall over the British royal family. Is Prince Harry truly Prince Charles's son? It was the kind of rumor that no one dared to repeat aloud inside the palace walls, but which the tabloids devoured with fervor. From the moment Prince Harry's copper-red hair appeared in childhood images, analogies to Charles's faded, and rumors of an affair between Princess Diana and cavalry commander James Hewitt burst into the public mind. Years of suspicion, merciless headlines, and viral side-by-side photographs later, a kid became the target of a royal plot. Throughout it all, Harry said nothing. He played his part as the charming younger brother, spare, soldier, and rebel. But despite the grin and sly quips, the question persisted. Not just in the press, but in Harry himself. We can't have peace until the truth is out. That's what Prince Harry allegedly told a close friend just months before what would become the most contentious moment of his life, and possibly the most quietly damaging for the monarchy. Because, at long last, the truth is revealed. Prince Harry underwent a sophisticated DNA test in a discreet, fully secured environment in California, away from royal advisors and tradition. No palace doctors, there are no UK labs, there's no risk of meddling, just science, facts. A man was desperate to silence a spirit that had haunted him for 39 years. What the test findings revealed did more than just rattle Harry. It sent shockwaves through the highest levels of royal power. Because the outcome did not match anyone's expectations, Charles is his biological father. Instead of providing closure, the revelation exposed a deeper wound, one of hatred, betrayal, and decades of emotional neglect. The truth Harry discovered did not heal him, it broke him. What followed was a fury behind palace doors, an emotional breakdown so extreme that servants described it as the most unhinged Harry has ever been. He was not striking out at the falsehood, but at the reality. The unimaginable had been proven, bringing with it a new, darker understanding of his position in the royal family. This is not just a DNA narrative. This is a story about identity, abandonment, and a prince whose entire life was based on a question no one dared to ask until now. And what Harry did next, after discovering the truth, may have finally pulled the crown apart forever. From the time Prince Harry was born on September 15, 1984, his entrance was met with the pleasure that only a royal birth could bring. Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, now had a spare to accompany his heir. The line of succession was secure. The general public rejoiced. The press flocked, and for a while, everything seemed wonderful. However, as Harry grew older, the murmurs became more prevalent. At first, it was just a harmless curiosity. While Prince William seemed strikingly similar to his father, Harry seemed distinct. His nose, smile, and most especially his vivid ginger hair didn't quite suit the Windsor mold. Those murmurs quickly became tabloid fodder. During the early 1990s, the name James Hewitt made news as a former cavalry commander with whom Princess Diana acknowledged having an affair. Diana and Charles met during her marriage, and their friendship, according to Diana, was serious, even affectionate. Photos of Hewitt's blazing red hair circulated widely, along with photographs of infant Harry. The comparison was impossible to overlook, or so the journalists believed. Despite Hewitt's repeated claims that his relationship with Diana began after Harry was born, the timing never stopped the rumor mill. And in an era when Diana's every step was followed by paparazzi, the prospect of a love child was simply too appealing for the public to ignore. For Harry, these rumors were more than just gossip. They became a defining characteristic of his youth. Even at school, peers are said to have joked about it. The nasty nickname Hewitt's Boy followed him from Eton to Sandhurst. And as he grew older, from military service to royal engagements, the question lingered like a ghost. The palace has never openly acknowledged its presence, yet it is always there. The royal family's silence on the subject has only fueled suspicion. There was never any official statement, no denials, no clarification, just a stiff upper lip and an unspoken rule. Some questions are never addressed, especially those involving blood. But Diana's death in 1997 deepened the wound. Harry was only 12 years old when he lost the one person who could have calmed the storm. His mother was gone, and she was the only lady who could validate his fears or hopes. From that moment forward, the question of his true identity became internalized. Behind royal gates, Harry became more defiant. The media portrayed the drinking, partying, and Nazi costume scandal as the actions of a spoiled prince. But some insiders have hinted at something more profound. A young guy in crisis, unsure of his place, identity, and the truth about his ancestry. His relationship with Prince Charles was reportedly tense during his adolescence. Charles, known for his reserved demeanor and emotional detachment, struggled to connect with his youngest son. And as the relationship cooled, the rumors grew stronger. If Charles doesn't even seem to like him, one critic wondered, how could he possibly be his son? It was a harsh story, one that Harry never publicly addressed. Friends claimed the anguish was profound and private, though. For decades, he harbored the belief that he was illegitimate, that he was an outcast in the household to which he was born. Even in maturity, comparisons persisted. Any photo of James Hewitt was immediately likened to Harry, especially as the prince approached his 30s. Social media threads, YouTube theories, and online tabloids. The speculation never stopped. If anything, it has evolved. When Harry married Meghan Markle, many assumed he had finally found someone who understood what it was like to be on the outside looking in. Others say the marriage exacerbated his internal disintegration. Meghan provided him with a new perspective on the royal institution, portraying it as cold, hierarchical, and emotionally repressed. As a result, Harry's urgent search for answers intensified. For the general public, the Hewitt theory was always a fascinating story. But for Prince Harry, it was something completely different. A wound that has never healed. A never-ending burning question. A whisper escalated into a shout. And that roar eventually compelled him to discover the truth. Because occasionally, even a prince must ask the most deadly question of all, am I really who they claim I am? To comprehend the gravity of Prince Harry's paternity rumors, one must return to the scandal that sparked them. Princess Diana's scandalous affair with cavalry commander James Hewitt, a love tale that piqued public interest and left an indelible stain on royal history. It started in 1986. Diana was 25 years old, emotionally isolated, and trapped in what she would later describe as a crowded marriage. Prince Charles had already rekindled his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, and Diana, in her own words, felt worthless. Enter Major James Hewitt, a dashing riding instructor assigned to help Diana overcome her fear of horses. What started as a professional suddenly became personal. The two gradually built a strong, very secretive friendship that lasted nearly 5 years. According to numerous interviews, including Diana's own taped confessions, she and Hewitt were profoundly in love. He became a confidant, a safe haven, and in many respects, an emotional substitute for a husband who had long since checked out. The couple exchanged hundreds of love letters. Diana commented, "My heart is breaking with missing you." The public had no idea until 1994, when Hewitt, struggling financially and desperate for relevance, agreed to let parts from their love letters be published in a tell-all book. The media pounced, scandal erupted. The once dignified officer was labeled a traitor, while Diana's private anguish became worldwide entertainment. However, the true media uproar did not begin until images of James Hewitt and Prince Harry were published side by side on the pages of Britain's most notorious tabloids. The similarities were uncanny. Both had blazing red hair, strong jawlines, and extremely similar features. The public focused on their common equestrian hobbies and aristocratic elegance. The suspicions began to spread. Could James Hewitt be Harry's biological father? The timelines, however, revealed a different story. Prince Harry was born in September 1984. Diana's romance with Hewitt did not begin until 1986, 2 years after Harry was born. On paper, the maths did not add up. However, conspiracy does not require accuracy. And once the people were behind the notion, no amount of argument could stop it. To his credit, James Hewitt continually disputed the allegations. In an interview, he asserted unequivocally, "There really is no possibility whatsoever that I am Harry's father. I can absolutely assure you that I am not." However, the harm had already been done. Even Diana's brother, Charles Spencer, tried to put an end to the rumors, calling them vile and hurtful. However, the myth continued, thanks in part to the royal family's failure to address it immediately. Their silence, intended to maintain dignity, fueled suspicion. Behind the scenes, the rumors took their toll on Harry. Though he never made a public statement, those close to him claim he was plagued by the resemblance. Every magazine cover, internet meme, and harsh joke undermined his sense of belonging. And maybe the most excruciating of all, the knowledge that at her most vulnerable times, his mother confided in the guy who is now accused of fathering her kid. The relationship between Diana and Hewitt was genuine, loving, passionate, and tragically flawed. But it was never the scandal that many perceived it to be. Nonetheless, the legend lived on, because for some who distrusted the monarchy, the thought that Harry was illegitimate was more than simply rumors. It was significant, a symbol for all they thought the crown had attempted to conceal. And for Harry, the only way out of that shadow was to confront the reality full on, even if it broke him, even if it broke everything. For most of his life, Prince Harry avoided the murmurs. He attempted to laugh them off. He attempted to conceal them behind service, duty, and even scandal. But as the years passed and the world became more rife with speculation, the question he had never dared to ask began to ring out inside his head. Was this possible? Was he actually not a Windsor? And so, in the solitude of his Montecito estate, hundreds of miles from the palace gates and centuries of history, Prince Harry did something no monarch before him had dared to do. He used science to seek the truth. It was discreet, quiet, no headlines. There are no press releases. Only a few people were aware, including Meghan, a private physician, and the lab director in Los Angeles, who had sworn to complete discretion. The test was carried out with a lock of Prince Charles' hair extracted from a years-old personal grooming kit stored in storage. A memento from his time at Clarence House, supposedly saved by a former staff member, sympathetic to Harry's quest for closure. The technique was modern, precise, and unwavering. There would be no gray area and no courteous hedging, only a 99.99% match or not. When the results arrived, Harry was alone. Meghan had apparently gone out with the kids. A single white envelope arrived by courier. No gold seal, no regal crest, just cold, clinical paper containing the solution to a lifetime of agony. He opened it, read it, sat silently. The solution was clear. Prince Charles was his biological father. It was not the outcome Harry had expected. In some ways, hidden beneath the sorrow, hatred, and sense of exile, he had expected, even hoped, for the opposite. He imagined a sense of freedom if he realized he wasn't truly one of them. The anguish, coldness, public humiliations, and emotional hunger would make sense because he never genuinely belonged. However, when confronted with indisputable proof that he was a Windsor by blood, something far worse took hold. This was not a relief. It was a disaster because the question had been answered, but the rejection stood. The institution continued to treat him like a stranger. His father continued to keep him at arm's length. His brother continued to draw limits that were too sharp to pass. All this time, Harry believed he was being pushed out because he did not belong. He realized he did belong, and they had thrown him out nonetheless. The truth was harder to endure than any fabrication. According to sources close to the prince, he became enraged. The silence gave way to yelling. Glass broke. Doors slammed. For hours he refused to speak to anyone, including Meghan. Not out of resentment towards her, but because the grief was oppressive. The tale he had told himself to survive, that he was separate, different, and even unloved from birth, had just been ripped away. He was not a fraud. He was not illegitimate. He was royal and still unloved. The test had given a positive answer to the biological query, but it had provoked a deeper one, more painful and permanent. If Charles is my father, why was I constantly treated as if I wasn't his son? There would be no rehabilitation from that. Not for Harry. Not for the crown. Not anymore. The truth was meant to set him free. For decades, Prince Harry carried the weight of a single question like a stone in his chest. A question that molded his identity, drove his defiance, and in many ways justified the increasing chasm between him and his royal heritage. However, once that weight was lifted, once the DNA test revealed that Prince Charles was, without a doubt, his biological father, Harry's expected liberation never materialized. Instead, something within him broke. What ensued was not tranquilly, not clear, but it was a tantrum. A complete emotional breakdown from a man who had spent years searching for purpose in the estrangement he felt from his family. According to sources close to the Sussex family, Harry erupted as never before. One source characterized it as a grown man screaming at the ceiling. Another, who had watched the aftermath, described the situation as a storm had torn through the room, with books hurled, wine glasses shattered, and the contents of a desk scattered across the floor. It was as if 39 years of fury and despair had burst in one overwhelming wave. He continued asking, then why? Why didn't he act like a father? The source remembered it was like he was begging the walls for answers. And the most heartbreaking part? He was not mistaken. Harry had grown up in a cold, traditional environment. His father was frequently absent, both physically and emotionally. Royal obligations took precedence over fatherhood. Moments of affection were scarce. Formality replaced affection. Even at Diana's funeral, the little prince walked silently behind her coffin, his hand held by his grandfather rather than his father's. The symbolic absence spoke loudly. As he became older, the trend persisted. Harry's faults were punished in public. His accomplishments were overlooked or minimized. Every time he reached out, whether for military service, mental health activism, or personal calls for help, the palace replied with formality rather than empathy. For years, Harry convinced himself that it could be because he wasn't Charles's son. Perhaps this was why the relationship was shattered. Now, with DNA evidence indicating the contrary, that idea has collapsed, as has Harry. The emotional damage was deeper than anyone had anticipated. According to reports, Meghan tried to console him, but Harry was inaccessible. I am not upset at her, but at everything. At the royal family, look at his father. Consider the falsehoods, silences, and years of emotional deprivation. He had hoped that the truth would empower him, that discovering he was a Hewitt or someone else totally would vindicate his decision to flee, rebel, and forge his own identity. Instead, the truth broke his only source of comfort. The idea that he was different, he was not different, he was one among them, and they still threw him out. At that moment, Harry lamented not just a lie, but a lifetime. Charles's birthdays while overseas, milestones passed without a phone call. The public pronouncements are colder than the headlines. Most importantly, he realized that his father had the opportunity to love him, but chose not to. This was not a childish temper tantrum. It was a traumatic tantrum in which a prince was eventually forced to admit that his agony was not the result of falsehoods, but of facts too harsh to bear. And after the truth was revealed, one decision remained. If blood wasn't enough to keep his family together, maybe it was time to break away from the bloodline entirely. After the fury subsided and the truth settled like ash in the air, Prince Harry did something unexpected. He did not seek reconciliation. He did not reach out. He severed the cord entirely. For years, the public narrative revolved around tension, a royal schism, a brotherly feud, and displeasure in his father. But now there was no strain, it was a finality. Harry had discovered the truth he wanted. The test verified what the monarchy had always maintained. He was a Windsor by blood. But the confirmation brought clarity. He no longer wanted to be one. According to people close to the Sussex family, Harry took a secret, irreversible decision in the days after the DNA test. No more outreach. No more diplomacy. No more olive branches. He concluded that the palace had long since decided to maintain the crown at the expense of his soul. Now he was choosing himself. It was not a symbolic step back. It was a definite walkout. One source put it simply. For the first time in his life, Harry was not waiting for their approval. He did not want their apology. He didn't care if they ever recognized him again. And behind that clarity stood Meghan, the one who had helped him find it. Critics had long accused Meghan of pulling Harry away from his family. But sources now claim the truth is far more convoluted. Meghan did not turn Harry against the royals. Rather, she demonstrated how a real family should feel. Doria, her mother, offered him parental affection. Their children showed Dad unconditional love. Despite her own public vilification, Meghan never ceased pressing Harry to seek the truth. When the truth was revealed and the damage was repaired, she stood by him. Not to persuade him to forgive, but to remind him of what they'd created. A life without a title to feel royal. Harry's final break was not filled with turmoil. There was no statement, press tour, or critical interview. It arrived in the shape of silence. Courtiers' calls remained unanswered. An invitation to a special royal family function received no response. William left a short formal message asking if they could talk, which was marked as read, because it wasn't just about pain anymore. This was about Harry gaining control of the story that had dominated him since birth. For so long, he had been the spare, the backup, afterthought, or second choice. He was no longer interested in playing a role in a system that had determined his worth before he had a say. And while the world continues to argue royal etiquette and palace comments, Harry quietly rewrote the finale to his story. Not in the tabloids, not during interviews, but in action. He decided to stay in California. He chose his wife. He chose his children. He chose peace. Most significantly, he opted to no longer seek the praise of those who only appreciated him while he remained silent. The monarchy had a chance. DNA testing confirmed he was one of them. But Harry, the prince, soldier, spouse, and father, chose to become something even more powerful. A man who walks away with his truth intact and his own self-made crown. In the end, the question that plagued Prince Harry was not about DNA, it was about identification, who he genuinely was, and whether that identity had ever been acknowledged by the family whose name he bore. The DNA test revealed the truth. It verified what many had suspected for years, and what Harry himself privately feared, that he was, without a doubt, the son of King Charles III. All of the rumors about James Hewitt, the plots whispered in palace corridors and splashed across tabloid covers, were false. However, knowing the truth did not provide the calm he sought. because the pain had not come from the conjecture, but from how he was handled, from the coldness of a father who rarely behaved like one, from a family that required loyalty but offered little love, from a crown that required silence while ignoring suffering. The DNA confirmed not only his bloodline, but also that the cruelty, rejection, and remoteness were not due to being Charles's son. It was because the monarchy chose to disregard him, even though he belonged. And that was arguably the most terrible truth of all, but from the truth comes power. Because once Harry realized the truth about his family, he stopped striving to earn his position in it. He no longer needs permission to exist. He stopped begging for inclusion. Instead, he demanded his freedom. He walked away, not in scandal, but in silence. Not in bitterness, but in strength. The world may always refer to him as Prince Harry, but the man has evolved into something greater than a title could ever contain. He is a father dedicated to breaking the cycle, a husband who prioritized love over bloodline, and a son, yes, by blood, who realized that being born royal does not equate to feeling regal. What exactly does it do? Truth, love, and the fortitude to walk away. Because in the end, blood might bind. Truth can set you free.